get sold, or they get, they get involved in many activities, they get into prostitution. Because I've seen a lot of our African ladies get into prostitution because they haven't got legal ways of working. And so we end up with a lot of layers of problems, and even though they were better off in Africa going back, there is no social net. There is no, oh, I'm going to go on job seekers allowance. There is not that. So you end up being stuck in some form of limbo. So it's understanding. It's understanding, and then also I also want to say this is migrants who come to Wales, the people I've seen and interacted in Wales, are not a homogeneous community. We are not the same. Different countries pose different situations. So if you come
welcome to the show. My name is Martha Wangikira, and this is Inspire Talk Show. So, Solomon, I would like to invite you or welcome you to this talk show, and obviously share a lot or hear a lot from you. But first of all, who is Solomon?
Solomon is a person who lives in Wales. I was born up in Scotland, of Zambian descent, so I am Zambian and British at the same time. I've lived in Scotland, I've lived in Wales, I've also lived in Zambia, and I've also lived in Botswana. So I've done a little bit of traveling. And yeah, so that's who Solomon is. Most of the things I do rotates around building digital content for different organizations, whether it comes to actual platforms or whether it comes to filming and things like that. So that's what mostly I engage in.
That's so interesting. So you live in Wales and you work here in Wales, and you're born in Scotland, and you're originally from Zambia. What a strong background.
Yeah.
Yes. So I've heard the word BMA. So if I may ask you, do you consider yourself to be a BMA or not?
Well, the key thing to that phrase is Black. The other, it
Black.
depends, it depends how you look at it. Others will say, but Black is the key thing. Do I identify as myself as Black? And I think I do, I am from the African continent, and I do identify as Black. So yeah. That's how I think it's an easy way to view myself as that.
Right. So what is it like to be Black or BMA, Black ethnic minority, here in Wales or in the UK in general, if you like?
All right. So it's very, very interesting. I think I would say that everybody has got their own experience.
Right.
Everybody has got their own experience. And regardless of where you're from or what background you're from, if you're moving from one place to a place where you become a minority, it always makes people you find around you uneasy. So it's not a common thing. I mean, it's not an uncommon thing. I mean, even if you look at the Ghana must go situation between the Ghanaians and the Nigerians, where even countries which are that close, or the xenophobic attacks in South Africa, or I mean, so just the fact that you're coming from a certain background and you move into a certain background, it's always met with mixed feelings. Some people like it, some people don't. How has been my experience? it's been a very interesting journey. It's been I think I think the way I would look at it, the thing I love about the UK is even though you always know that you have to work twice as hard compared to your Caucasian brothers and sisters. If you put in the effort, you can go as far as you would want to go. You know, I have not hit a ceiling yet in my endeavors, you know, so all I need to know is, you know, I put in my effort and I can go as far as I need to go. And I find the same with what you call this again. I find it with everybody. I mean, I look at in Wales the health minister, who I don't know him personally, but I do know that he's of Zambian origin as well. He's got he's a Zambian Welsh mixed. So it shows you that, you know, the person who's dealing in this time in this time of COVID and all these things related to that is a BME who has a very similar background to me. Different in sorts, but I think you get what I'm trying to say.
I do get what you mean. It shows that if you work hard, you can achieve something, and possibly the available opportunities, you can actually achieve a lot if you work for it, regardless of your color, I think. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, you could achieve it. I mean, the fact is, I'm not stating that it's easier to, we don't face challenges. We do face a lot of challenges. However, you put in your effort, you can basically accomplish a life and a sense of community which would work for you, you know. It's the effort you put in. So it's all about just putting in that extra bit of effort. And that's what I would suggest.
Yeah, it's so interesting that we have a minister from the BMA community, but we also have people who think, no, it's not possible, it's not for us. Is it maybe lack of information? Maybe we don't know how to get there, because there are a lot of complaints. But again, we've seen some, you know, living examples that it's possible to get somewhere.
It is, but also it is, but also there's a lot of let me tell you a story for this to make sense.
Yes, I love stories.
When the British first moved into different parts of Africa, and they moved into different parts and they went as far as, you know, using, you know, people, Cecil Rhodes with his British South African company, they moved in, you know, they realized that Africa was mineral rich. And when they realized that Africa was mineral rich, what they decided to do was, you know what, we need to start all these big mining ventures. So they found a way of starting to mine. But they realized that the Africans lived one with nature. They didn't take from the land more than what they required. They just lived one with nature. A lot of all these time, you know, a lot of all this time you hear a lot of people talk about, oh, we need to go back to nature, this and that. You know, Ubuntu is an African concept. It's Ubuntu just means the togetherness.
Humanity? Ah, okay.
So they realized they were not getting anywhere. So what they decided to do was introduce what they called a HAT. That's H-U-T, tax. So every homestead had to pay a tax on every hat they had on the homestead. And so what that did was it created a demand for the young people in those villages to move to the towns to go work. And so when they moved to the towns to go work, they didn't go live in the nice posh houses which other people lived in. They went and lived in the shanty compounds. And now you go to Africa, dotted around Africa, is you get these shanty compounds, but you still get this mass migration coming from rural areas into the town centers, thinking they're coming for a better life. Now, to stretch that out more is you are getting the same type of forces of people living Africa thinking that if they come to the UK, they're coming to the land of milk and honey, you know, where, you know, the streets are made of,
Gold.
And the truth is that's not the case. That's not the case. It's just the way it's been painted in our minds that if we come here, life tends to be difficult. I mean, life tends to be easier and all that type of thing, you know. But so that creates an environment of people showing up, or people showing up and not getting the type of warmth which they thought they would get. And it creates a lot of, I mean, some people have left Africa for genuine reasons. Others are just plain old economic migrants.
Yeah.
And it's understanding that it's a grind. You don't just get up and you're driving a Lamborghini. Even here, you work as hard as you get. A lot of people are doing 10, 5, 6 shifts, you know, just to put food on the table. You know, so it's not as easy as we want to paint it out to be.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of pent up resentment and all that. And also, and also in some cases, if in some cases, there's a lot of in some cases you do get racially attacked. It does happen. You know, we can't say it doesn't happen. And I'm not saying that. You know, I'm not saying that every Welsh person is a racist. You know what I mean? Because that would be wrong. But there are enough racist people in society to make it uncomfortable, even though they're just a minority.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, so that's how I look at things.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. I like where you mentioned that people think that when we come here, it's about getting rich, roads are painted, I don't know which way. So, and I think this is one of the reasons why we have a lot of cases on human trafficking and modern slavery, people leaving their countries thinking that here it's a paradise, and arriving here, no documents, no legal right to live and work here. They get frustrated and they end up even living on the street.
And they get sold, or they get, you know, they get involved in many activities, you know, they get into prostitution. Because I've seen a lot of our African ladies get into prostitution because they haven't got legal ways of working. And so we end up with a lot of layers of problems. You know, and even though they were better off in Africa, going back, there is no social net. There is no, oh, I'm going to go on job seekers allowance. You know, there is not that. So you end up being stuck in some form of limbo. You know, so it's understanding. It's understanding, and then also I also want to say this is. Migrants who come to Wales, the people I've seen and interacted in Wales, are not a homogeneous community. We are not the same. Different countries pose different situations. So if you come, for example, from a former British colony, at least you know that when you come here, your education will be very similar to what goes on here. You speak English, be it with an African accent like I do, but your English is not that great. It may not be that great, but it's there. But if you're coming from a place like a former French colony or a former Portuguese colony, it becomes, you know, for example, you're coming from Congo, which was Belgium. You know, there are loads of layers, because if you're coming from Congo, first, you know, for us who come from Anglophone Africa, we assume, oh, you know what, schools were easy, but it's not the case in Congo. You know, not a lot of schools were established. A lot of things went wrong really fast. So you will find that you would think that most of the Congolese would speak French, but no, you would find a good number of them speak in Lingala, the local dialect more than they would even French. And so yeah, you're starting at that level, and you're coming into this country as an adult and having to sit down and learning the system and understanding all these different things becomes a challenge. So it's understanding that it's not a homogeneous community. And then, for example, then you have the interesting migration of a lot of nurses coming from places like Zambia. You know, so you have a lot of, if you come to Wales, there are a lot of nurses coming from Zambia, a lot of nurses coming from Zambia. They're coming from a different economic, and settling in for them was a little bit easier because they came into jobs which were, you know, above 25,000 a year in pounds to get paid. So they came in, and so they settled in, they got mortgages, and they, you know, much faster than, say, for example, somebody who, for example, came in as a refugee, say from Zimbabwe, when they were taking a lot of Zimbabwean refugees who came in and had to spend 10 years signing in at the police before he could even think of, can I get a property? So you get all these different situations and layers, which mean that, you know, we're all Black, but not all Blacks are the same. Everybody has got their own story in where they get in from. And even just at school, you understand, because you're coming from a country where you understand the school system better, you push your kids further than other people. So there are all these different stratas of issues happening in people's lives. And so to understand that we are not homogeneous and that we need to segregate, not segregate, segregate is not a nice word, it's got a very wrong connotation, that you need to kind of, you know,
the limit or something.
Yeah, so, you know, group people in certain groups so that you can support them in different ways, you know, and that's what needs to happen. And yet what we find is always blanket solutions for people, you know, and that just is very, very interesting. But yeah, so that's what I have to say about that.
So, but now here in Wales, we have this scheme of engagement and the inclusion. And this is actually targeting or aiming to help BMA or Black ethnic minorities. So at this stage, my worry is whether the BMA or Black African minorities really understand what they need, or what do they know what they need, how do they need to engage. That full knowledge, how much do you think they know? I don't know, maybe you haven't done a research on that, but do you think we are all ready to engage and to be included with all these, you know, challenges?
So firstly, I want to, now I'm going to be a bit more general in my strokes in understanding this question. I'm going to start it from the other side before I reach to what BMEs and mainly Africans are supposed to do to settle down.
Right.
Yeah, I'm going to start it from, you know, the problem I have when you have an agenda for inclusion, and you're bringing about your problems, and then you decide that the solution for it is tokenism, you know, it always never works. Tokenism is something which is killing us. So for example, we are not seeing enough Black films at the BAFTAs. So what we will do is we will nominate a Black film, no matter how awful it is, for a BAFTA. And that is that type of tokenism is horrible. It's insulting, and because you're not asking yourself, why aren't there enough Black films? The reason why there aren't enough Black films is there's not enough opportunities for Black filmmakers to make the films so that they can be nominated, so they can be seen. It's the same. It's the same way in jobs. I mean, I've seen job after job of my African friends applying and applying and applying and applying, and they don't get the jobs. And then someone decides, you know what? just to, you know, we're going to give this one role to a black person just for appeasement. One, because you're not really looking at his qualification, it becomes a general exercise of appeasement. When he goes there, it's a hit or miss. It's a hit or miss. He might not even perform, because you're not asking yourself, why is it all these black people who are coming in with similar qualifications to white people are not being picked? There's one guy from Swansea who I won't mention his name, but he applied to one of these big firms for a job. So he applied for a job. And after he applied for a job, he wasn't taken. So what he did was he took the same CV, removed his African name and put a white person's name and applied to the same firm, and he got picked. He got picked. Same application. Now, that is where the problem is. This is where, if you want to talk about inclusion, that is where you begin with. Why aren't we getting picked? Not let's pick for this role. So I find that in terms of government, the type of engagement and inclusion which ends up happening is tokenism. And what happens is our Caucasian friends don't welcome that, because it looks as if they're being left out because of we need to give jobs. And I've been in those conversations where, you know, Solomon, have you considered applying for this? They're taking black people. I don't want to be taken because I know that I'm qualified. I know I have worked hard. You know, I've been in situations where I've done better than some people, some of my Caucasian friends in class. And I'm the last one to get the position. I just want to get my positions based on merit, just like they do. But by tokenism, what happens is it makes us look bad, as if we are unable to get the role based on merit. So once you're not questioning what merit is, you end up with a lot of these tokenistic views. On the flip side, I know I've talked a lot about this. On the flip side is, how do we engage? How do we engage? It's very interesting. I think let's talk a little bit about culture, you know, and I'm mainly going to focus on the African experience, so that you understand one of the biggest things which lets us engage is understanding the culture. And understanding the hard things. That's what lets us do the things which we need to do, is understanding the hard things. So what do I mean? What do I mean by we need to understand the culture and all that? You see, generally, now these are just general overviews, you know, so I'm not saying every black person is like this, and I'm not saying every European is like this, but generally, we fall into two sets of rules. So the way, you see, when a black person meets another black person, the African culture is to trust everybody you meet unless they wrong you. That is how African culture. So you can meet somebody today and you sleep in their house, and that's okay. Nobody's going to question you. I mean, you're my friend, and we can even joke and laugh the whole night, because that's how until I rob you, then you can say, I can't allow Solomon into my house because he robbed me. You understand? But on the flip side, Caucasians or Europeans, their sense of trust is in reverse. You have to earn their trust. So once you meet somebody, they don't trust you right away. You have to show them the reason why they should trust you. And they do it for the safety of their kids and the most vulnerable in society. So you just can't show up and go to somebody's house. They have to be a certain element of trust. Now, imagine if you were to show up. So this has happened many times. I've seen it happen so many times. is one, you just show up randomly at somebody's house because you're thinking, he's my friend now. I've met him yesterday. I'm gonna go, I know that he's not working today or this and that. I'm gonna go spend 5 minutes with him. Right? And then immediately you speak to him, or can I spend 5 minutes with you? You show up at his door. The first thing which happens is the Black person gets bruised because he's arrived at the door and the person is, wait a moment, you have shown up and announced, I don't really know you. Why should you come into my house? You see, so the Black person gets bruised by that reaction. Well, he needs to trust me because I haven't done anything which needs to be trusted. And the white person gets bruised because he's like, why does he come to my house without, how does he do this? I don't know him. He shouldn't be coming into
different cultures.
Yeah. So there are different cultures. And I am not saying that one is right and one is wrong. But once you understand the behavior of your friend, it builds a bridge. You know that, in this person's culture, this is just unacceptable. And you adjust and and I'm not saying change yourself for the sake of fitting in. I'm just saying that when you interact with certain people, behave in a particular manner. One of the things which hurts a lot of Africans is our concept of mercy is very different. You see, as an African, one of the things which you would find is we always push for mercy first. So if somebody wrongs you, the objective is to try to bring this thing to the past and bring a point of forgiveness. Whereas our European friends, it's justice. If something is wrong, there must be retribution. Now, justice is important, mercy is important. All these things need to happen in moderation. However, if you, for example, are in a work environment, you will find that one of the things which affects a lot of Africans at integrating is whenever a European does something wrong, you show mercy.